You're welcome back. Now, diplomacy meets challenge, grit and determination this August as British High Commissioner to Ghana, His Excellency Ian Walker, cycles across Ghana from the north to the south, covering over 1,000 kilometers. Now, he's calling it the Ghana Grand. This adventurous journey seeks to kindle conversations about health, about our natural environment, about tourism and more, and of course, overcoming challenges while raising funds for the plastic surgery and burns unit of the Korle Bu Teaching Hospital. Now, for 10 days, His Excellency Ian Walker will be cycling through Ghana, interacting with the many extraordinary Ghanaians while making intermittent stops to experience the beauty and warmth of Ghana. Remember, the challenge is not just to cover a 1,000-kilometer stretch and more, but also to raise funds for the plastic surgery and burns unit of the Korle Bu Teaching Hospital. To support with funds, you can dial MTN short code star 700 star 9 hash. By the way, thank you to all of you who did this yesterday. Today is your turn, okay? Don't be left out. Star 700 star 9 hash. And then just follow the prompts. At a point, it'll ask you for a code. Type in the Ghana Grand. That's your code, the Ghana Grand. Or if you're with Vodafone Cash, just send it through to 0207 566 351. Or if you're with Standard Chartered Bank, there's an account number where you can pay it in. It's 010010406181. That's 010010406181. All right. Now on social media, you can follow them at UK in Ghana. They're across all social media platforms. The hashtag is the Ghana Grand, okay? And of course, the multimedia group is proud to be the media partners for the Ghana Grand, all right? Now, let me tell you about one other thing before we quickly get into AM Talk for today. Now, Graphic Business, in partnership with Stanbic Bank, presents the Graphic Business Stanbic Bank Breakfast Meeting. Now, what's the issue? Is it poor bookkeeping? Is it high cost of capital? Or perhaps limited opportunities for SMEs and so forth? Well, for answers, join the Graphic Business Stanbic Bank Breakfast Meeting. The theme is building a national equity fund to support SMEs. That's a thought. It's all happening on the 6th of August at Labadi Beach Hotel. To participate, please call 0277 39256. That sounds like a very long number. I'm not sure that's right. 0277 39256. Okay, all right. Or 0242 650 449. All right, 0242 650 449. All right, or just go to graphic.com.gh to register. The partners are Joy Business, Labadi Beach Hotel, and Graphic News app. Graphic Business, setting the business agenda, and Stanbic Bank moving forward. Should be a good one. All right, I'll tell you what else will be a good one. It's our conversation today. There's so much to talk about, and our guests, Anthony Ifa is a member of Parliament for Isukuma Odobing Brakwa, and of course he's a member of the Finance Committee of Parliament. Also here with us, Edward Bauer, Honourable Member of Parliament for Bungo, and of course he's on the Mines and Energy Committee. He's also a former spokesperson for the Energy Ministry. Well, this should all turn out very informative and interesting. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
All right. All right. I think the big news is PDS concessionaire contract has been suspended. Now, this, we are told, has happened because government has, during their further due diligence, noticed that some of the guarantees that were to be provided by PDS in order for them to be eligible to be concessionaires, some of these guarantees have turned out not to be valid. And so investigations have begun to determine exactly what is going on. In the meantime, to secure the assets that have been placed in the hands of PDS, the contract has been suspended. ECG has taken over that distribution role for the entire nation while we await, well, apart from where NEDCO operates. And we await the resolution of this matter. Right. It's hard for me to decide where to start. But I think it's not even who to start with, but where to start. You know, I think for me, the important thing I would like to understand is how we got here. It was always my understanding that that these were conditions precedent. So we should have known about these things before the concession was handed out. But before we get into that, why don't we first hear Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah, who was the first government official to speak to this matter, and it happened on PM Express last night. Let's hear Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah, then we'll come back into this.
We have detected some anomalies specific to the guarantees that were issued by the consortium of PDS.
Okay.
And our first obligation is to secure the assets, particularly the cash assets, etc.
Okay.
And suspend.
Let's break this down because you say guarantees. People are listening and watching. What it means is that they came and said we have guarantees to provide the monies and investments, correct?
Yes.
To bring also, to deal with the sector.
Yes, and also the assets that we were handing over to them. And the risk that was involved, they provided some guarantees for that through a number of insurance companies. We have, through due diligence, detected that there are issues with those guarantees that were provided.
So as in what? They were not available?
Well, they were not.
They misled us?
They were not valid. Okay.
That's misleading.
Well, it is being investigated currently, so I won't proceed to point it. So they were not valid, and as a result, we have taken a first step to secure the assets of the state by suspending the concession agreement and ensuring that the assets are secured. The Energy Commission has also quickly moved to revoke their distribution license and allow ECG to literally go back to work and perform on that side while we go into a full-scale inquiry into the validity of
So as we speak tonight, ECG is back in control of the whole sector.
Of the distribution sector. PDS is suspended. That's the statement we just issued.
Okay, but you missed the, how do we miss that? You said we now
there are conditions precedent, then there's due diligence, even before.
The due diligence is what
led to this. Alerted us.
But why didn't you do that before?
Because there are conditions precedent and then there are conditions subsequent. Okay. So in the beginning, there are a number of things, and also because of the deadline that we had at the time, there are a number of things that they were supposed to meet, which they did. And then it goes through a due diligence phase. It is this due diligence that has alerted us to the fact that the validity of some of the guarantees are in question, and we've moved therefore to suspend it pending a full-scale inquiry.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. So that happened just last night, Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah on PM Express right here. With Evans Mensah. So at about 10 p.m. we got confirmation of this. All right, so Mr. Efa, let's start from the beginning. How did we get here? How did a condition precedent become a condition subsequent? For which reason we are now discovering these things?
Well, good morning, Kojo and Ba, and also to our cherished viewers on this matter. It's only last night, like you said, that this news came up. And so some of us are here to find out what exactly is the situation. But I think it's a fair action to suspend the concessionaire agreement and then do additional work to be sure where we have to go, whether to continue, to revise, or to abrogate. But my understanding, or from what I heard, the indication is that whenever you get into a contract, even a loan contract, you're supposed to meet certain conditions, what you call conditions precedent to the action, and some could also be subsequent to the action. I cannot place this particular one, whether it was a condition precedent or not. But whatever it is, as long as you're supposed to provide a guarantee, that guarantee has to come first to your office for you to establish whether it is authentic or not. And you could live with it if you don't do further checks. And sometimes, even in the traditional banking sector, people bring documents purported to be title holders of properties for loans. If you don't do additional work on that, do your searches properly, do your evaluations properly, it turns out that what we hold it probably is previously earlier incumbent. So then you become a secondary, in terms of priority, you are unsecured against the first person who took it. So a lot of due diligence happens, and it should be ongoing. And I'm happy that only 6 months or so after the concession agreement had been signed, this has been found out. Because it takes time to provide all this information. And so, if my understanding this morning when I listened to one of your sister stations was that the officer who executed it didn't have that mandate to execute. Now, what does it mean? Is it fraudulent, or is it that the office that was to effect the mandate or the signature, that office did not receive it? So we still have to search. But really, if this has come up, then I think it's timely. Just 6 months into the concession agreement, we find out this. So let us wait to get additional information as we leave this place. I'm sure I'll be interested to follow, to find out exactly what it is.
Yeah, but if you don't mind me asking, I mean, just because you've used the word timely twice in reference to the fact that we've been in this deal with PDS for 6 months, and you've called it timely twice, and I'm just asking, you see, if this had indeed been a condition precedent, this is something we would have noticed in our due diligence before signing, because that's the nature of a condition precedent. You must fulfill that condition before a signature is, before the deal is made. So we would have noticed this problem of the wrong person having signed, or we would have noticed this before we went into the deal, before we spent money labeling and rebranding things, and so it may be 6 months, but it is a massive cost to the nation, simply because something that ought to have been a condition precedent, somebody decided to make it a condition subsequent.
You see, when you've worked with the banks, you have conditions precedents. Sometimes you can have waivers or deferrals.
Yes.
And it should be understood, or I agree between the two of you. Why? Because the issuer of the guarantee will probably be doing some work on the applicant, the one who wants the guarantee.
Right.
So you apply to your partner for a deferral or even a waiver. Sometimes there's a waiver to it. So once this has come to the notice of the country, I think you don't have to find blame with somebody, because when we say conditions precedent, it means you need to satisfy that before we go into that agreement. But you see, until you have the guarantee before you, you cannot determine whether it's fake, it's genuine or fake. So now that it has come to us as a country, the most important thing is what has been done. Now this has been investigated. Even with the assets that ECG, as it were, gave to PDS to manage, PDS on their part also had to do some due diligence to see whether indeed the equipment, as stated in maybe the stock report or schedule, really exists and where they are found. So a lot of work goes into all this.
But they are not the ones suspending the contract here.
No,
so
they are not. But I'm saying that it could have been that PDS also saying that Ghana has done something wrong. You see, it could happen. But now that we have identified, that is a very important element of the agreement, to submit a bond or a guarantee, such that for non-performance, your bankers or your guarantors will be called upon to pay. It's so important, we cannot deny.
Right.
Kojo, I'd like to take you to even our road contracts. Most contractors, when they come to the ministries for these jobs, are required under some of the contracts to provide performance bonds. And the understanding is that in case the contractor fails to do the performance and on time, you can fall on the banks.
Yeah.
On many occasions, even government does not follow up with the guarantees. They just let it go, and they say the contractor has not performed, and then we abrogate the contracts.
This is all causing financial loss to the states. We should be prosecuting those who do this.
Yeah, the important thing is that now we cannot be too sure. The Minister for Information is telling us today that they have suspended it because of what they've observed. And if I heard it properly, he said that some people are even going to that institution which issued it to confirm again whether indeed it's properly done or it's not properly done. We may have, the bank or the institution may have the authority to issue the guarantee, but the person who signs may not have that authority up to that level.
Right.
So let us do a little more work and establish that this indeed has not been properly executed. What will be the resolution? The resolution will be either to abrogate, to take some charges, or to get the guarantee properly done. All these are remedies that we can exercise as long as it's established that there's something wrong.
All well and good, Mr. Ifa, but let's not gloss over the fact that we are not simply checking this while the contract continues to run. A decision has been made to suspend the contract while this is checked. So it doesn't seem to me a minor administrative detail that is being verified. It seems something far more serious than that. But we'll come back to this issue. Let me quickly acknowledge the presence of Ishmael Ejekumhene. He's the executive director of KITE. That's a think tank. Mr. Ejekumhene, good morning. Thank you for your time with us. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Good morning.
Fantastic. Good morning to you. Please stay with us. I'll be coming to you next, but not before I hear from Mr. Bauer, who, of course, you spoke for the ministry for a while, especially at a point when some of these things were being put together at the very initial stage of the media arrangements with government of Ghana. Is any of this shocking to you, or did you see it all back in your day?
Thank you very much. Good morning to your viewers and to my constituents. You know that August 24th, my fate will be decided again by the 917 delegates in my constituency.
That's true.
So I just hope and pray that they look kindly on that day when it comes to the voting.
But we'll send you a bill for this.
So, but on a more serious note, I think that it's not interesting that listening to the information minister, he talks about due diligence. They're going to conduct due diligence. You are handing over an 18 billion worth of assets to somebody. And it is only 6 months after you have handed over to that, we are going to do further diligence, due diligence on that particular person you are handing over the assets to.
But does that mean they never did any before?
I'm going to come there. And I'm happy that he is part of the committee, because the committee that looked at the concession and approved it was a joint committee of mines and energy and finance. So he was there. And these issues were raised. You realize that in the concession, we had condition precedents and we had condition subsequent. Indeed, the concession itself was supposed to start in February. You know that it was moved to September.
Yes.
Because there were certain condition precedents that had not been met. Then suddenly in September, some of these condition precedents were moved to condition subsequent.
September last year.
Yes. And so we raised...
Moved by who?
Obviously by government.
Okay.
Moved by government.
So let's narrow it down.
Yes.
Which team or department or organization or ministry
anybody
was responsible for this?
Obviously, this was something that was being done by the Ministry of what they call it, energy. Of course, with finance, because of the asset owner. You understand? But the issue was that we drew the attention of government, because whoever is acting in the name of government. Drew the attention of government to the fact that, look, these conditions you were moving to as condition subsequent, we're going to head. Particularly when ECG itself had flagged certain issues. I'll give you one. You had an insurer for this particular person, and that was Danwell. The total capitalization of Danwell is about 50 million. And they were insuring, the portion they were insuring was about 300 million. You had the, what do you call it, ECG talking about in terms of even monitoring.
So for the purpose of our viewers, what you're saying is that the insurance company they were engaging to insure about 300 million worth of assets. That insurance company's entire value
was about 50 million.
Was 50 million. Yeah. So they are in no position to insure 300 million worth of assets. All right.
But then they made that to pass. You had a situation where even the reinsurers, when they went back, they could not ascertain who these people were. If, of course, Carl Bank popped up, but Carl Bank was just a technical advisor, was just a technical advisor in the whole deal. You also had a situation where, you know, as part of the concession, ECG was supposed to be a monitoring and a performance contract between the concessionaire, that's PDS, and ECG for them to be monitoring it, because there were certain targets they were supposed to be meeting. And if you look at it, the schedules were there. This was a contract that was never signed. They moved it as part of the condition subsequent. You had situations where there was some amount of money. You know that the 500 million that they were supposed to, because it was part of the whole idea of the bringing a private sector player into this was that, look, they were supposed to leverage on their financial muscle and their technical ability to be able to improve the services. Because if you look at the three functional zones of the power sector, the distribution sector was the weakest link. Right. So the whole idea was to leverage on private sector equity and, for that matter, expertise to improve on that part. You never had anything to suggest that you were going to get that at least that 500 million that was coming. Up to today, as to speak, you don't have it. So you go back and ask yourself, if you tell us today that the very reason why you are suspending this concession is based on the fact that there are certain aspects of the conditions and guarantees that you were supposed to do, that you are beginning to discover that they were not. These things were told. You were told that even before you went into that. Okay. And you see, no, let me make a very quick one. And when I was coming, I said, look, it's an indictment on all of us, even in Parliament. And I'm going to make this point. I personally remember, and if Mr. Ifa will remember this, and then the then finance energy minister, Aboche Jako, when I insisted that they were stampeding us to approve a concession of this nature just within an hour. Parliament, I said that was so wrong. That man took offense. That I was being disrespectful in my utterances and other things. Today, the whole Parliament of Ghana was asked to approve such a concession in an hour, in 1 hour. And today, we are here with the fact that you have a government suspending this particular, agreement.
We'll have to talk a lot more about this, but I don't want Mr. Ejekumhene to stay on the line for too long. Now, Ishmael, you and I have talked about these matters before. And yesterday, when I spoke to an energy expert, I asked him the simple question, has our power distribution sector improved since PDS got involved? His conclusion was that nothing had changed. But clearly, we are now starting to see that PDS itself perhaps was not engaged properly.
Kojo, quite frankly, like you've held me on for some time. I'm actually supposed to be running into another meeting. But let me do this very quickly. This thing came suddenly last night, so we all need to understand exactly what those breaches and those anomalies are. But to back to your specific question that you asked, I'm sure you were trying to ask whether there's been any improvement in the quality of service and whether it's possible that this is happening because they weren't properly. I think that this is just the beginning of a very long, the way I see it, a long conversation that I believe more and more details are going to evolve. And I think it's too early for anybody to start apportioning blame. But in terms of, and that's what I would like to say, because I think you need to hear the other side of the story, and I believe that the PDS themselves will be speaking, and I don't want anybody to even impute anything that probably might turn out not to be the fact. I think it's very, very early in the day. But realistically, I don't think anybody expected things to change within 3 months. I didn't expect that to change because those improvements in efficiency were tied to investment. And as far as I'm concerned, those investments haven't been made as yet because I think they are all in a transition period. And I personally didn't expect things to change. That's why they have annual performance benchmarks that will be measured at the end of the year. So I wasn't expecting something magical to happen overnight because as far as I know, there hasn't been any new investment. They're trying to reorganize things. I said somewhere that what I've seen so far is that at least their interface with customers, they are very quick to put out notices and things like that. We hear news about outstanding debts that they are collecting, which I believe are positive, because one of the problems that ECG had was their inability to collect. So those are positive signs. But in terms of on the technical side, seeing improvements overnight, I wasn't expecting that. But I guess the government has raised a very fundamental issue that goes to the root of the contract. Unless and until we all know the kind of breaches they're talking about, you probably wouldn't be able to comment on whether or not they ought to have seen this or whether this agreement was rushed through and things like that. I honestly believe that it's just too early for some of the conclusions I'm hearing to be made. But I think I don't know whether, Kojo, you've heard from the PDS?
No, we're working very hard to speak to them. We haven't yet heard from them.
Exactly.
No statement has been issued.
Since this is a contract between two parties, I think we probably need to hear their side of the story before, because I'm almost certain that they will have a response. And so I think we probably need to just hasten slowly, but it's a new development that took everybody by surprise, because we thought everything had been sown. Right. Has anybody heard from the concession, the managers of the concession?
We are working hard to speak to MIDA. And
because they all will have a big say in all of these, because they were actually the managers, and I think it's a bit too early now until we all know, for example, what material breach they are talking about. Is it something that could have been seen or should have been seen? And I mean, I know you know that in law, he who comes to equity must come with a clean hand. So are we also sure, as a country, we also have fulfilled all our side of the bargain? And I think it's just too early for us to be even drawing some conclusion. And I left to me alone, we should give this whole story some time, and things are going to emerge that will change our conclusion.
Okay. I want to thank you for your time, Mr. Jekum-Hene. I'm aware that you have to rush to a meeting, but thank you very much for your contribution. We appreciate it very much. Right. Now, I have a few questions, okay, about what it means to suspend this contract. And I'm hoping between the two of you we can figure it out. So we already know that there's a lot of money owed. The private power, producers have been complaining about debts owed to them. It appears that PDS is supposed to pay some money. That hasn't happened. Now, PDS, as a private company, also had their own arrangement with ECG. What they are doing has to be profitable. So essentially, they're supposed to make a certain amount from what they're doing. All of these murky things are yet to be clarified. Now that the contract is suspended, does this mean that that payment that is supposed to come in for the power producers is also suspended?
You need to look at it from, if you look at the arrangement, PDS is not really the off-taker for the IPPs. It's ECG. ECG buys it and sell it to PDS for distribution. Now, you know that, and I like the point he made. The point he made about you hearing the side of PDS. Because if you listen to the narrative of PDS over the weeks, you know, part of the condition subsequent that was supposed to actually come from the side of government had to do with the issue of tariffs.
Yes.
And PURC setting up tariffs that will be cost reflective.
Realistic.
You understand? And so PDS had an issue with that. The fact that if you look at the current tariff levels, they were not reflecting cost. You see? Yeah. So that was an area they needed to do. But of course, that is for government to do. And I believe that PDS coming will be pushing this. That look, these were things that you reneged on, even as your side of the bargain. They will talk about that. However, in terms of as to whether payments are supposed to be suspended or not, obviously, if power has been given out to you, IPPs expect that ECG pays that back. ECG definitely has also an agreement with PDS as to how they're going to do that. And I'll be surprised if government, in trying to suspend this arrangement, wouldn't have taken into consideration how these challenges will be dealt with. Because you cannot, remember, it is not an abrogation of the contract. It's a suspension.
Suspension of it.
Even though going forward, I know that these are areas we should look at. If maybe certain things have been dealt with, a certain material changes have come, or maybe discoveries have come that can nullify the agreement. Government must begin to start looking at these things. But as you said, we need to officially hear the side of PDS as to what happened. But I come back to my original point. And my original point is that we could have avoided this.
Right.
We could have avoided this.
Let me hear Mr. Ifa on that particular point. What is it that made government ignore these warnings that Mr. Bauer says were given?
Yeah, when Mr. Bauer speaks that some views were ignored, I don't know in what capacity, because it was a joint committee, and whatever decision came out eventually binds us and gives direction to government to go ahead or not to go ahead.
Stop this.
Essentially,
stop this.
That's not where I'm going. What I'm saying is that the decision has been made. There were several inputs. And even on the majority side, I'm sure there were some objections in some areas or the other. PURC concerning the tariffs was represented at the joint committee meetings. And the lady responsible for this was made to speak to the subject matter. And she did not have any objection to the tariffs. And she confirmed there was disagreement with PDS. So probably if it has to be looked at again, that's fine. Now, the potential effect of this suspension, I think, could bring us to the point where the services that go to the consumers would have to continue. I do not foresee that within this period of time of the suspension, and I don't know how long that is going to take, there will be the need, for example, for PDS to suspend activities. There are some resolutions, and I suggested that the fact that something has gone wrong does not mean the whole contract could be abrogated. Okay. The reason for the suspension is to make time for the parties to see whether they can resolve or remedy the breaches or the shortcomings, or to say that we cannot continue with the operation. And so I agree with the consultant Ismail that it's important that we all wait. And like you said, it was only last night, and some of us even had it only this morning on our way to the studio. So it will be worth going back to see, but the point is that services will continue to be provided to our homes and factories and companies, and so that should not disturb the operations that we have. Subsequently, when there are decisions, it will be made known to Parliament especially, and we may have to reconsider whatever.
But let me ask you this: is it true, because you were there, is it true that you were warned against moving some of these conditions from precedent to subsequent?
Well, there may be a reason if that happened. I can't be too
Did it
sure.
happen?
I can't be too sure. I don't remember. No, I was in the committee meetings, and Honorable Bao Bemia, we had a series of meetings. It wasn't only one meeting. And I don't know the block of conditions that were moved.
Right.
I don't know which of them were moved and which were not moved. So the documents are still available. But like I said, in practice, you may determine a condition to be a condition precedent, and I'm taking the experience from banking, where the contracting party could ask for a deferral, which is also permissible under trade.
Yeah, permissible doesn't mean you do it, and especially if you do, you know the entity you are dealing with.
Deferral, I'm not talking about waiver. Some conditions that have been agreed as conditions precedent could be deferred for implementation subsequent to some other actions.
Which is
there may be reasons.
Which is what we appear to have done on this occasion.
There's no justification.
And it's backfired.
No. To suggest, and I think we should take a cue from what the consultant said, that we should not conclude that it's backfired.
We're taking what the government says.
The government says that
there is an anomaly regarding the guarantees.
Yes.
And we know that these guarantees were conditions precedent, which were then deferred to conditions subsequent.
But I'm saying that in practice, several things could have happened which are permissible under any agreement.
Okay.
Waivers, deferrals, suspensions.
Yes.
And it only brings you back to the table.
And permissible does not mean prudent. I think we can agree on that.
I think we're speaking.
All right, let's bring in Pakwesi Anamwasichi. He's the executive director of the Institute of Energy Security. Pakwesi, good morning to you. And we talked about this just yesterday, almost as if we knew what was to come. And you made the point about conditions precedent being turned into conditions subsequent. And now look what's happened. I wonder what your reaction is, Mr. Anamwasichi.
To you and to your viewers. It's rather unfortunate that we come to this point. We were thinking that PDS was bringing healing or solution to the issue of distribution inefficiency. And so we were all happy that they came in to do that. But like we discussed yesterday, we need to follow procedure in whatever we do. That some of these conditions that were key part of the takeover were not met. And another major component among these variables being the payment security was not met. Yet we went ahead to pass on UPG to PDS before we asked them to bring those conditions or meet them. If we have took the position of the condition precedent and say, bring this guarantee before we proceed, I'm sure we'll have done the due diligence at the time and forestall any issue like we have at hand today. But because we made this condition subsequent, and later we have to go and do due diligence, we realize that we're giving out something to somebody who doesn't have financial muscle and maybe the right attitude to handle the UPG we thought Ghanaians could not handle. And so it's quite unfortunate. We think this is a failure on the part of due diligence and following protocol.
Right. Now, I mean, the information minister yesterday sought to explain that this was all further due diligence they were doing, which uncovered this anomaly. What they're saying is that these guarantees were not valid. We're hearing Mr. Ifa's explanation that the invalidity might be because the wrong person signed for them. But either way, the point here is that government has continued due diligence, and that is what has revealed this. Surely, if it is a condition subsequent, due diligence cannot happen before the contract, can it?
It is true, but when you put the cart before the horse, this is what you get. I'm saying that if we maintain the position as condition precedent, then we would have done the due diligence even before the takeover. And so there will not be the embarrassment of coming back and saying that we have suspended it. However, better late than never. I think government have been bold as well to admit that things have gone admit, and so they are suspending. I'm sure other regimes or somebody else will have said, look, for the sake of the embarrassment, let them have it and correct it as we go. And so we'll be making the same mistakes. And so I can also applaud government for, being bold and say, enough is enough. Let's get back to business and see if we can do it ourselves or in a better way.
Now, let's look at what this will cost us, okay, financially and otherwise. We are 6 months into this concession, and all of a sudden we're suspending it. Where are the cost areas? How is this going to cost us as a nation, whether financially or in terms of resources, time? How is this costing us?
So I think program has been retarded in the first place, and so that's one thing that we missed. The second thing is
I'm sorry, can you say that again? Say that again, please.
I'm saying that progress has been retarded.
Right.
Because we think moving forward and all of a sudden we have to come back again and start anew from somewhere. The next thing is that government is going to do an investigation. We pray that we should get it right, that we should have a case. If it happens that we don't have a case, then of course, we have judgment debt in the offense. And so this is what we hope to see, that we get it right so that we don't get judgment debt. The next thing is that the issues at hand in the sector, thinking that PDS was going to introduce efficiency and bring down the technical losses, which is more than 25% in the UPG system, and also part of the reason why even the finance minister has declared a state of emergency. We have lost this, and we have to go back again and go and look for somebody else or finance somewhere to support this cost. And so the delay in all this will cost us money as we go.
Now, those who produce power for us, the independent power producers, they are waiting around on hundreds of millions of cedis. in order to keep operating. Tell me what this will do to them and their timelines. Are we now going to see a delay in the provision of their funds, and how will this affect power production? Are we likely to see outages?
Well, for the first part, at the point we have socially here, it's also quite unfortunate. It's a sending out a clear signal to them that, look, the system is not good and things are not good in the whole value chain. And so anytime we have another person dealing with us, a potential investor, they are coming from a point where they have enough information about us. So our risk profile goes up as a country. And when your risk profile is high, both in operational terms and countrywide, you have to pay more for the support they give you. I'm sure that's some of the reasons why we have this PPAs that we signed that has been constructed and we're paying huge money for. We weren't shopping at the wrong time. We weren't shopping from a weak position. And today it's showing clear that we are still in a very weak position and we cannot negotiate and get a better deal for the country. That is one weakness that's in there.
So basically, we've weakened our negotiating position. That's another loss as a result of this, all of this confusion around PDS and payments. Are they, now that the contract is suspended, is it going to be easier or more difficult to get these payments that have not yet come from PDS?
Well, I'm sure you still collect the bills, and our PDS was collecting. Mr. Kojo Komayan assured us that all aspects of ECG have been secured. I'm sure it includes both the liquid one as well. And so if it's true, then I don't foresee any challenge in the payment of this money to the IPP. If it goes to PDS, then comes to UCG to pay. Now it's going to go directly to UCG to pay. And so I'm sure the procedure and the direct trustee has rather been shortened for them to proceed. I don't foresee that.
Right.
It's true that all the assets have been secured.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Pakwesi Anamwasich is Executive Director of the Institute of Energy Security. Now, I want to come to you, Mr. Ifa, for this one really quickly. For the period that this contract is suspended, would you say that our power distribution sector is worse off? Particularly because we brought in a concessionaire because of inefficiencies of ECG.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to make a little statement regarding listening also to PDS.
Right, right.
Now, PDS did not give the guarantee to Ghana. It is PDS requested the bank to issue the guarantee. And so we have to listen to PDS, whether or not they themselves authenticate whether or not that guarantee was valid. It's very important. So you go to your bankers, I need a guarantee, and then the bankers charge you and the junior officer signs out a guarantee. It's not in your domain to determine. So let's leave all these issues to be addressed properly. But in terms of contract suspension, maybe the lawyers will understand what it means. And I believe that that contract probably made provision for remedies. That when this is not in place, this should be done. And we need to make that reference. And I would rather we waited to see what remedies are available to ECG or Ghana should anything like this happen, until we are able to determine that we are not able to say that it's going to affect the relationship. The government could straight away have said it's abrogated last night. But it says it's suspended, which means even though they found one thing, they want to do more work. Probably there are other breaches that has not come to the fore yet. It's in the interest of the country for Ghanaians to exercise that patience for those who are working on this documentation and the agreements to come back to us. We should demand that they come back to report to us on what subsequent findings they have. And there was also this view which I expressed that probably we as a country have also some obligations not yet satisfied, and we need to know all that. This is an opportunity for them to sit around the table again and tighten all the knots that probably are loose by now. So for me, the services, what matters at the end of the day is that Ghana should not lose money by the suspension, and PDS should also not suffer unduly by maybe non-compliance of one of the conditions or otherwise. Whether it's a condition precedent or subsequent, I'm saying that they are all conditions to be satisfied. The only difference is that one has to happen before and one has to happen after.
But the weight on them are not the same.
Plus, the impact of breaching one is different from the other.
Let me give you a simple example. In some of our contracts that we signed, the loan agreements, when we sit, the only condition precedent that we identify is for a confirmation that the appropriate authorities have been obtained. That is to say, parliamentary approval has been granted, the Attorney General has given an opinion, and that's all the condition precedent. But the most important part of it is the execution. Are you going to use the money for the purposes, intended purposes? And that, they sometimes will say we would monitor, or we may not have responsibility for monitoring. Ultimately, we want to get paid.
But in this example,
Mustafa,
forgive me, in this same example, Mustafa, if you were to take one of these condition precedents, like has Parliament approved it, and then you change it to a condition subsequent, and then you go ahead and sign for a loan, and it turns out that Parliament does not approve.
No.
What is the impact of that?
When it's a condition precedent,
yes,
obviously you have to go to Parliament.
Yes.
Now, what confirms that Parliament has approved it? Is you can check from the hazard, but you can also see the resolution that's come from the Clerk of Parliament. All these have to be attached to the approval.
Yeah, but the point is,
but if somebody decides that becomes we are making this a condition subsequent, so you don't have to prove that Parliament has approved it before we sign the agreement.
My understanding of conditions of agreement is that the two of us have to agree to make it condition precedent or condition subsequent.
Yes.
We may agree for it to be conditions precedent and later come back to you to say that let us make it a condition subsequent. So no one party to the contract can unilaterally move the conditions.
But I don't pay taxes to PDS. So PDS is not a party in this contract representing me. The government of Ghana is the party representing me as a Ghanaian. So if PDS agreed to this, I can't hold PDS to account for that. But I can hold government to account for that, can't I?
You hold government accountable for whatever actions they take. The choice is, should this be a condition precedent or a condition subsequent? Now, the two parties to the agreement, which is government and PDS, must agree where it should be. Now, it doesn't matter if, for instance, it is a condition precedent, and then the two of you subsequently agree that we should move it to another area. It can. The reverse is also true. Where a condition subsequent now becomes so critical, you want it to be a condition precedent. You can go back and negotiate. So, like I said, this is a specific thing that has happened, and we need to look at the detail exactly what is happening.
Right. Okay.
Speaking in general,
I'll ask the same question to you, Mr. Bauer, if you don't mind. Are we worse off now that ECG, which we understood to be, inefficient, corrupt, and unable to properly manage the distribution sector, is back in control?
Okay, so I've always indicated, even within the concession, that the conditions that the freebies are used, that PDS was being given, if ECG had been given those things, they would perform. That, for example, all the debt owed by government was supposed to be made and ensure that they are paid. If ECG got that, they will function.
So why do you understand? No,
I'm just trying to give you that they will function. If, for example, ECG was guaranteed a cost-reflective tariff, they will function. If there are certain milestones given, and that there will be somebody critical, and here the superintendent ministry, or maybe the board of directors, should make sure that these milestones are met, they will perform. So as to whether ECG would be worse off or not, is based on our attitude towards our own national asset and how they are managed. But you see,
but we know our attitude.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It's all dependent on that.
We know it.
Because so you know why? You know why? You know why? You know why I'm making that point. Look at the players within the what they call it, PDS. They were just ECG people who had just been moved and the name given. So the same set of human beings who were now acting in a different under a different name. You had the MD who was once there. You had the staff who had just been moved from ECG to PDS. I don't know if you're getting the point.
I get it.
It's the same set of people with the same assets. So basically, if as a country we were serious and we felt that, look, let's give these people the same conditions we are giving to this new quote-unquote entity. My expectation is that if PDS would deliver, then ECG would deliver.
So the same why did your government not consider doing that rather than agreeing to the concessionaire arrangement?
And I'm going to answer that question as my last bit, and I'm going to do that. You see, but I just don't want to lose sight of a particular point that he made. You see, you are handing over, and I made that point, that was my opening statement when we started this discussion. You are handing over an 18 billion worth of assets to somebody to manage. The least you can do on behalf of the people of Ghana is to ensure that the guarantees that you need to be able to hand over this thing, you satisfy them. That's the least you can do. Two, you realize that from the conversation we are hearing from all the people who matter, there's a suggestion of fraud.
Where are you getting that?
The officer who was supposed to, the officer who signed was not qualified to sign.
Is that fraud?
What is it? What is it? You have a situation where you have an entity that's supposed to offer a particular guarantee or an insurance or whatever you to an entity. You are authorized to do that. Then I come to do that. What is it?
It may simply be that you didn't realize that your authority doesn't extend there.
No. What are you talking about? Who triggered off? How did they get to know that the officer, because the entity says that, okay, he has the authority to do that on our behalf. There will not be an issue. Because it means that they will, the obligations that are on them, they will take it. The fact that government thinks that the officer who signed this was not authorized would definitely have been emanating from the entity that is insuring you.
So the bank or
I don't know you're getting the point I'm making.
said that this person who signed did not have the authority to do so.
Because if we are supposed to offer you the guarantee and we say that Kojo Jansen should sign, it means that we are still obliged by the terms of the arrangement or the agreement to honor our side of the bargain. So the moment you have the other party say that he's not authorized, it means that it must be emanating from you, the one who is guaranteeing the assets. So that's why I said there's a suggestion of fraud.
Well, I don't know if you can still leap directly.
No, there's a suggestion of fraud. That's the first thing. But now back to as to why we didn't do that. Look, let me tell you something. The agreement, the challenge that we had as a country, and I gave you the thing that, look, we all identified that the strain in the power sector was just the distribution end of it. Government had decided that, look, first let's move on to ensure that we reduce the losses within the ECG sector. And the way to reduce this was to, one, make sure that, look, they efficiently run the machines. You build on the obsolete equipment that you are going to do. That was one aspect. And PURC was supposed to do it. That's why they were giving them targets to meet in terms of their losses, technical losses and that. If you look at the PURC, there were some allowable losses that they were giving and others they needed to meet them. So that was one aspect. That's the PURC aspect. There was also another aspect that had to do with the financial challenge. And that was the debt that they owed and other things. It is all part of those things that were put under what we call the legacy debt. That had to be dealt with. And that was what came under the Energy Sector Levy Act. That was supposed to deal with that. But when the Americans, after the Compact 1, realized that, look, we were qualified and we could take advantage and then get the $500 million that we're going to get. We said, look, this was money, that was a grant, but we're supposed to just meet certain conditions. The condition was that, look, we will give you this thing, we'll give you this money to go under what they call the Financial Operational Turnaround Project, to ensure that your obsolete equipment are being updated. A few other things are being done. But in doing that, we need you to take advantage of even beyond just the 500 million we're giving you, to leverage on private sector to bring in more equity, because 500 million will not do. And that's how government went into that.
But it was also to hand over 18 billion worth of assets into the control of a private sector entity.
Yes, but that is why...
Wouldn't you rather simply fulfill the conditions to ECG and keep this very sensitive 18 billion cedis, asset under state control?
Yes, but the issue is that you were having $500 million. That today, we're talking about roughly about 2.5 billion Ghana cedis. That was coming free.
Yes, but the cost is
handing
over
private... You see, you can mitigate the cost. And the mitigation of the cost was to ensure that you choose the right player to bring efficiency and improvement. Now, look at the procurement process that finally created what we call PDS. It was messy. You had people going to court. You had BXC going to court. And they disqualified almost everybody, including just leaving the players that are in now. And so, if you look at even the procurement process in bringing PDS itself, was questionable. People had raised those issues. And so I'm just saying that in the face of what we had and we needed to manage, government itself did not demonstrate that they had the people of Ghana at heart. Because some of these conditions that we're talking about were very critical. And for you to, and that's the question you ask, if you have a condition precedent that will secure your asset, 18 billion Ghana cedi asset, why would you want to move it from condition precedent to condition subsequent? Why would you want to do that?
Mr. Ifa, let me ask you about this done well insurance claim that Mr. Bauer is making. Is it true, as a member of that committee representing finance, is it true that done well insurance was being brought in to secure an asset that was 6 times the capitalization of the company?
I can't answer. I'm not too sure what it is. But you see...
Is this not something that came up in the committee?
I don't quite remember this. But in financial management, you leverage on your base. You cannot say that because you have 50 million, you can only do 50 million transactions. You can partner. We have syndications. You can partner with other companies to do the whole transaction. You can also reinsure. So these options are all available. Otherwise, then you will not do anything as long as you have 50 billion. But I don't know about Dawel. But what I want to say here is that to suggest that in selecting PDS, government did not have the interests of Ghanaians at heart, I think is stretching the argument. Because this initiative started with the NDC.
Yes.
And the conditions were worse than NPP.
What are the conditions?
You were saying that you were going to give away 51% of Ghana's assets to, we're going to keep only 20% of the assets and then give away 80%. And we had to renegotiate to bring it to as a 51% in favor of Ghana. That is one. The second condition that we all undertook was that over the term of the concession, no Ghanaian employee was to be terminated. And then we said,
this is a whole part of it. There was the security of tenure of all the workers. That was from day one in the discussion of the concession. Job security was one of the things on the table. Was one of the things on the table. Yeah, was one of the things on the table. You know why?
About 5 years. You know. Then second, let me continue with the discussion.
Okay. Actually, that is factual.
Yes.
I do recall. We covered
and after 5 years,
limited to 5 years.
We had to do extensions, and we are saying for the 25 years, we negotiated again from 25 years to 20 years. We reduced the concession period. So some work had been done in addition to what you did. The initiative came from the NDC.
Sorry about that. I'm not cutting you. I'm not cutting. No, I'm sorry. I'm not cutting you. No, I'm just. It is important to insert in your discussion that even though it was 25 years, in the original contract, in the original concession, it was subject to review after 10 years. So if after 10 years we knew that they were not taking us anywhere, we could opt out. In this current one, we do not have that.
All right. Okay. Mr. Ifa.
Ultimately, the two governments have had the opportunity to look at this same concession agreement. And I cannot say, for instance, that at the time that NDC was negotiating this contract, they didn't have Ghana at heart. That was the best they could do. And Ghana, when NDPP came, we said, let's look at it again. And we came with better conditions than previously, all in the interest of Ghana. So that statement that MPP did not have the interest of Ghanaians. I want us to debunk that and say that we have made some choices. Now, what is on the table is that PDS has been selected to offer the services to Ghanaians. There is a condition that has been identified to be a breach. Now, let's allow them to do more work and then come back to us. PDS probably may not even know that the officer who signed the agreement didn't have that mandate to that level. They may probably, I'm saying probably, do you understand?
But that would still not make the guarantee valid.
That is why,
whether PDS knew about it or not.
I said there are remedies. That contract probably provided remedies, but I'm saying that working, taking it from the point of view of correcting the anomaly, a proper agreement contract could not be in place. A proper guarantee could not be in place.
Let's very quickly speak to the Minister for Energy, Mr. John Peter Amewu. He joins us on the line now. Mr. Amewu, good morning, and thank you very much for making the time. This is engaging everybody's attention now, but we would love some clarification. What exactly has occasioned the suspension of the concessionaire contract with PDS?
Yeah, good morning, and good morning to your listeners. The announcement from government of the suspension is as a result of a material breakdown detected. The contract allows for some conditions subsequent and conditions subsequent and conditions precedent to the execution process. And so, as part of those requirements, the original owner of the asset, which is ECG, continue its due diligence process. And it is this process that has established that there is some element of fraud in executing the payment security.
Can you elaborate, please?
Well, fraud in the execution of the payment security simply means that the payment security tender was not conclusive and was not in accordance with the requirements and the specification that was required, and that it was not authenticated by the sources that were supposed to execute that agreement.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the security that was to be provided turns out not to be what what is spelled out in the agreement. They provided security that does not meet the requirements.
Not exactly, but the payment security that they provided and that alleged coming from the source execute the agreement, now denying that they have never executed such payment security.
Oh, all right. So that is fraud. So basically, you suspect that PDS lied to the government of Ghana to get this contract?
Well, that evidence will come up.
Okay. Now, this was a condition subsequent. But my understanding is that originally, this was to be a condition precedent. They were supposed to provide evidence of these securities before signing the contract. Exactly. Why was it changed?
Why was it
changed from a condition precedent to a condition subsequent?
I think MIDA will be in a better position to answer that. But also, again, because of the timing of the agreement, you realize that there was a need to quickly execute the agreement because of time consideration. At that point, time was expert. But such person like MIDA will be in a position to tell you this.
Right. Did MIDA make this change without the approval of government of Ghana?
It was a discussion among all the stakeholders, and I think that, as I said earlier, you should be able to get a clarification from me.
Well, Mr. Amewu, if government of Ghana was part of the discussion, then you should be in a position to explain to the people of Ghana why you agreed to change that condition from precedent to subsequent.
Yeah, I've made mention earlier on that the timing of the agreement was very key, and the date of execution of the agreement was one of the conditions for exercising the agreement. And so to make sure that the agreement takes effect, of course, MIDA, as the investing body or the investor, has a responsibility to make sure the agreement is executed. So whatever it takes them to make sure the agreement takes effect from the date that was stipulated. I think that was exactly what MIDA.
So what you're saying is that in order to stick to the timelines, Government of Ghana agreed that we would sign a contract with a concessionaire that was yet to prove its securities to us. We agreed to do that just to meet a deadline?
No, don't forget, please. I stated earlier on that there were due diligence processes ongoing as the agreement is being executed. I mean, as we speak now, because there are still processes to be completed, ECG on its own as the owner of assets has a responsibility to continue doing those processes. So it is not a result of the timeline talk that doesn't trigger it. It is a process of ongoing engagement, which of course mandates the owner of the asset to do anything that claims its right to authenticate the validity of what document was submitted.
So what would have happened if the Government of Ghana had insisted that no, we want to see these securities and do our due diligence, make sure they exist, that this company is actually in a position to manage our 18 billion cedis assets before we sign a concession agreement with them? If we had insisted on that, what would have happened?
What would you think yourself? Because I mentioned that the timing of execution of the agreement was very relevant. And
yes,
so
but that
maybe,
time
I
was...
don't know, but maybe what the MCC may have to do at that time is that if the condition of that agreement is not executed, we're not going to put in what is required. I don't know if that may happen. I'm just...
Hello? Hello? Right. We may have lost contact with Mr. Amewu there. Let's see if we can get him back on the line because I think that's an important question we need to answer. So we're learning something new here. Government believes that fraud was perpetrated by... okay, Mr. Amewu, can you hear me?
That what is important now is the fact that... can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, yeah.
Is the fact that it has been established through the process and that though the agreement was executed, the process of due diligence had not come to an end. And so that allows for further findings and details of the payment security to be examined. So it's an ongoing process.
Yes.
The agreement, again, as you are aware, has not been terminated.
Yes.
It's been suspended. And so the suspension of this agreement gives the path for all the stakeholders involved to engage in further discussion. Okay, so we have suspended it because government also considers the assets of Ghanaians very important. And in order not to put these assets in the hands of people who claim they have the financial capability to execute the project, it's proper government with a suspension on that. So this is really what has been done.
How long is this investigation going to take?
Not too long. I'm sure we will come back to give Ghanaians.
Are we talking weeks, months, or days?
Don't forget the issue of fraud would have to involve some elements of security involvement for alleged fraud. And so those responsibilities, of course, will be coming from the security agency.
Right. Now, we know that before this, this suspension came up, there was an existing issue with PDS regarding payments. The independent power providers were up in arms because they were owed some money. And there was a suggestion that there are some payments due from PDS. What's the status of that? Have you collected that money?
That has been so, yeah.
So they don't owe any money at the moment, at the point of the suspension?
Not as I know.
Right. So now that ECG is stepping back in, I mean, the reason why a concessionaire was a good idea was because ECG had some massive inefficiencies and problems with their own operations. Now that they are taking over, are we to expect a return to those inefficiencies?
Well, I don't know whether during this period, the few period that PDS has acted, if the efficiencies have been clearly eliminated. I wouldn't know. Maybe you, as a consumer from that perspective, what you could tell them. ECG, as we know, of course, we all agree that there have been some high elements of inefficiency, losses. And so they're coming back during this period. What it means is that there needs to be high level of supervision to make sure the stability of power that we enjoy.
Supervision by who?
Hello?
Supervision by who? Who will be doing the supervision?
Of course, there is a supervising ministry, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Was that not possible in the past?
Well, one of the reasons why the agreement also comes into existence is not only because of the inefficiencies, which I hope you are very much aware. It is also the fact that most of our infrastructure are still, very, very old infrastructure that has existed for periods without being seen. Huge losses as a result of bulk supply points. Transmission lines have been down. Distribution points have not been well stabilized. Payment systems were not well formalized. And so supply through distribution was not well guaranteed. And so there have been a lot of problems that were detected right now from generation, transmission, distribution, and supply. So it is not only because of the inefficiencies in terms of managerial role that the PPG need to play. That is why the concessionaire team is not at all. There were other factors that were involved.
Right. Now, you as government, you suspect fraud here. If it turns out that you are right, this contract will be abrogated, will it not?
I'm not a lawyer. I think there are various options. Of course, it's proven that there's an element of fraud, and then PDS, of course, as the body responsible to provide the payment security, has also been classified and concluded as those responsible for this fraud. Then, of course, fraud precedes contract. That, from a layman point of view, who can say that. Now, if it has been established from all reasonable doubt that what we are all talking about is not true, and that the agreement that was executed is an agreement executed from the company that was supposed to do it, and that there was a consideration in the sense that, of course, money was paid and received by the executing company. Then, of course, it means that the suspension would have to be lifted. So these are the options that we will be looking at.
Right. Now, before we talk about the future, I just want to clarify the detail you just shared there. So the reason why you suspect fraud is because the company that is supposed to provide the security, which PDS claimed to have, that company says we never gave PDS any such security. Am I correct?
Well, notice that the company said we, the people responsible to execute the agreement, are not the ones that have executed the agreement. The signature that was found on the payment security has been found, and that the person responsible to sign that signature is not the one who signed.
That's pretty much.
And also, if the agreement has been executed for payment to be done, we have not received any payment. So it means there's no consideration. If there's no consideration, of course, there's no contract between PDS through its intermediary. Don't forget, there are other three intermediaries that were responsible for execution of this agreement.
So
Dan Wells Insurance, Carl Bank, and then Joe Australia. And Joe Australia was at the final point between Dan Wells Insurance and Carl Bank. So that's the whole agreement.
So which company is now saying we never signed this and we haven't received any consideration?
It's supposed to be the company that should be providing this payment security.
Which company?
Claiming that we never executed.
What's the name again? Which company?
Apple from Qatar.
Right, okay. So they are, all right. So now to clarify, this company says that they didn't sign the documents that PDS provided to government of Ghana. They didn't sign it. The signature was forged, and they have not been paid to provide any such security. That's what they're saying, correct?
That's precisely.
Right. So if this all turns out to be true, and if indeed fraud is proven, and that then nullifies the contract, what next? What will be the next steps for government? Will ECG simply continue to provide distribution? Does the MEDA agreement simply die, or what next?
This is a very good question. I would be thinking that this further engagement process will have to be conducted with the MCC. Don't forget the money is coming from their outfit, and so they maybe will be coming out with a framework. That's exactly what the process is going to be. Whether a new participating distribution company would have to be invited, to take up the position of PDS. I think these arrangements would have to be looked at, and the NCC will be very key in the media, making sure that this is done. Don't forget that our food company has also drawn our attention to the fact that the gentleman who was appointed to have signed the agreement has already been suspended, and that they have taken this issue very seriously.
Who said this? Sorry, who said this?
The company.
They say that the person who forged the signature has been suspended?
Yes, of course, and that they are taking the issue very seriously.
So the person was an employee of theirs?
I would suggest so. If it has been suspended, then of course it must be an employee.
Okay. So now the debate has been ongoing about whether or not we would have found ourselves in this position if indeed we had insisted on this being a condition precedent. Now you've explained that the pressure was on from MEDA to make this a condition subsequent, and as a result we are here. So if indeed we end up losing any money as a result of this, through all the processes we've gone through, transferring assets to PDS, now we're having to reverse. If the government of Ghana loses any money here, are we going to hold MEDA responsible for that?
Losing money in terms of...
Well, a lot has been done. We have rebranded, relabeled assets and so forth. We've done an entire process to move employees from one company to another. Obviously, these things were not...
were those calls really coming from government?
Say that again?
Were those calls burden on government?
Well, you tell me. You're the minister.
No, you are asking.
Did the government of Ghana incur any cost here?
The government has already put in some money, which I'm trying to find out. The PDS activities, branding, and all those. That was done by... I would think that those are responsibilities of the PDS.
Yeah, so now that we're taking these assets back...
in the book of PDS.
Now that we're taking these assets back, will it not cost us anything to rebrand them if indeed the fraud is proven and the contract ends up being abrogated? Will we not incur any cost in
Of course, if there's fraud, there must be damage.
Right.
Isn't it? And so damages presumed to have been taken care of by whoever conducted that fraud.
So we would be suing PDS for those damages?
I would prefer that we leave this to the security agency and the lawyers to delve in detail. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Amewu, I want to thank you for your time with us. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much, my brother. Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. So Mr. Amewu has provided quite a bit of color to our picture. Okay, so now we understand what the problem is. According to the company that PDS says they had security from, there was no security. None. Okay. And government actually suspects fraud in this, and an investigation will determine whether that is indeed the case. But again, if this was a condition precedent, would we be in this position? But I want us to look into the future. Mr. Ifa, what are the lessons here?
Yeah. The call for additional information, happily, we got before we left the studio. And coming from the Minister for Energy, we should, and then also the Information Minister, we should now be convinced that there is some suspicion of fraud or some fraud, and it has been proven. The lawyers will say you still have to go ahead and do some work. It means that we do not have to be in a hurry, as my colleague Bar was saying, that within an hour we had to go do all this work. But I think so much work had been done. People would like to have their way at all times, and I get worried when business people who intend to support a developing country come and then they get into these things with that. So we as Ghanaians now will have to start taking up some of these responsibilities seriously. Our workers and our management of state institutions should prove that we can do it and do it very well. So we don't have this alternative foreigner or foreign company coming to take over. Let us now take up the challenge. When it comes to investment, let local people take up the responsibility. Where people can invest $200 million. Sometimes we go for loans as little as $40 million. Maybe some Ghanaians, a group of Ghanaians can provide this. So essentially what I'm saying is that let's have a call for our own people to get interested in managing our own assets. So we don't invite people only to be embarrassed in the middle of the transaction.
Okay.
It may be very expensive if we must always invite people to come and manage our affairs here.
Mr. Bauer.
I think that first, as a country, we must have we those who particularly have been privileged to be part of decision making when it comes to aspects of this country, that we do this thing with a general principle that you want to protect the country and its people. We should, as it were, push to the back burner issues of partisanship. And that sometimes when somebody is making a point, don't see it as a way of trying to just put some spokes into your works, but that it is bent on, maybe it is targeted at improving issues like this. I say this because some of these things, look, I feel embarrassed as an MP that this document came through, and on record, there was a report emanating from a joint committee of finance and mines and energy approving this. When ordinarily, as the representatives of the people, we could have insisted on trying to make sure that all the necessary due diligence have been made. I feel embarrassed, and I think that
you feel embarrassed too?
I think
I've said that,
and I think that
everybody,
and I think that we must begin to start looking at these things, and that you realize that issues come up. I was just looking. My colleague had even a few weeks back had also talked about, let's look at this PDS ECG thing. It's a bad deal, but because it is coming from a wrong person, nobody listens to it.
By wrong person, you mean opposition?
Opposition. Okay. Nobody listens to it. And I think that, look, there are certain things we can differ on in terms of ideology, position, other things. But when it comes to the issue of protecting the national interest, let's be united in this.
Well, I guess this is a lesson in sovereignty. When a nation signs over an 18 billion cedi asset to a company that has shown no guarantees, and we do this for $500 million. I want to thank you both for your time, Mr. Edward Ifa, and of course, Mr.
Mr. Edward Ifa, and then Anthony Bauer.
Mr. Anthony Ifa and Mr. Edward Bauer. You see, we appreciate it. That's when a condition precedent becomes a condition subsequent. Thank you both very much for your time. And thank you for watching the AM show. We appreciate it very much. And if you want more news, go to myjoyonline.com.